Okay guys, the holidays are almost here and I thought it would be fun to paint this loose poinsettia. You are gonna need your paper towels, a nice large paintbrush. This is a size 12, I think that'll work well. And you're gonna need a mix of reds. Get whatever you have. I have a crimson, a scarlet lake. Those are probably my go-to. Reds, Winsor and Newton. We'll need like a darker green. So sap green, undersea green. And look for a yellow. I have a Winsor Yellow Deep here for the center. And I have a little gouache mixed in with that too. So if you have a little white gouache, something like this, permanent white, we can mix that in and give this a little more substantialness, I guess, so that the center shows up a little better. So grab your supplies and let's get started on our loose poinsettia. I have a lot of red on my brush and we're gonna start with 3 or 4 main petals and they're very wide and broad. So I like to start with them opposite of each other. So let's try this. It's a big swoop out, almost like you're painting a leaf, and then it's gonna come to a point. And then I'm just gonna load up with a lot more red. This is a mix of Scarlet Lake and Crimson. And we'll do it again like this. I'm gonna fill this in most of the way with paint. So this is a wet on dry, right? I'm not doing wet on wet here. It's a dry paper and I'm using my wet paint and I'm going to bring it out to a point. It's a very large petal, so we may get a very big poinsettia here, but that's okay. I'd like to place another one opposite this one now. So again, I'm gonna load up with a lot of pigment, maybe a more crimson on this one. I'm gonna leave space for our center here and I'm gonna put a petal opposite. So you can see maybe that that's a slightly different shade of red than the first petal. And that's fine because they vary in a real poinsettia. They're not all exactly the same. And sometimes they have green mixed in. If you look at a real one. All right, and you can see there's some white left in the center there. And those are probably good to set the base of our poinsettia. I think I'd like to do, I think I'm gonna go in with just water now. So really rinse your brush. And now it's just completely clean. And I think I'm gonna go up against this guy and I'm gonna overlap with a sort of just a clean petal, okay? So bear with me a little here as I go over this and make a new petal out here, okay? This one's a little less wide. It's a little more narrow, and we'll still keep the tip, okay? So I have literally no paint. All the pigment in this petal is bleeding over from this one. And maybe we'll do that again, no paint on my brush. We're gonna do it again right here, okay? Okay. I like to have a lot of variation in my petals. I don't really like them all to be the same tone. Now, we can get a little bit of our pigment and touch like the tip. See, now this is our wet on wet technique, right? Here we are touching a wet petal with some wet paint and adding a little bit of dimension to it. So I think that's fun. Let's put in a couple other petals that are just water to even this out a little. And the shape will kind of come as we go. And it's not going to be perfectly symmetrical because these actually aren't usually in real life either. Okay, so I like that one. And actually I'm gonna go and I'm gonna use pigment for this next one. I just feel like this one might be darker like our first two. It's kind of hard to get the right angle, but I'm gonna let him bleed into this one. And just come up and overlap. Yeah, so you can see he's a little like wonky. He's not like a perfectly symmetrical flower, but we are gonna add some layers. We are gonna add some layers here. And we can also refine the shape of some of our petals And remember, a dry brush is a thirsty brush. If you want to pick pigment up, see how I can pick the pigment up there and now make it look like this petal is on top of the other one. Just like over here, where this petal looks like it's on top. And here too. So you can see we already have the basic shape going. We can add in a few more layers and we'll basically be done with the base of our poinsettia. We can add a petal, a smaller petal on top, like this. And we can also tuck smaller petals behind. And the way we do this is just by putting it in here like this, and then keeping it off kind of the others, although it's going to bleed. And again, this is a fairly loose, we're going fairly loose here. We're not trying to make it perfect. You see that one's kind of tucked behind now. And if we get a little darker red, we can really make it look like he's tucked in. We want to keep our bleeds here because they just add a lot of interest. Yeah, so he's not bad. I kind of like how he's coming together. Might add one more petal. We'll see if we can do it. Sometimes I'll just add a petal again by going over top with very little paint or completely just with water. So what I'm doing here is I'm drawing off my brush, I'm rinsing it, drying it slightly, and then I'm pulling over top. So you see what we're getting is the effect of a little petal here up on top. And I think that looks kind of cool. Yeah, we can even do one more here. It's gonna be harder because this petal is very dry, but you see I can pick the pigment up with a clean brush and just kind of make it look like there's a petal right here. So now we have a couple different layers of petals. We have like a little petal in the back, we have some petals on top, and he's got lots of layers, and I think that's fun. So look at your flower, see how it's coming together, see if you want to add anything else. I'm going to make this guy a little more substantial here to add a little more to him, just so he's got a little more oomph. Might add one here just to help our shape a little. And then we have to decide where are we going to add our leaf, because we do need a place to put a leaf in. So let's think about that as we finish this petal up. Okay, so we cannot do our center until everything is pretty dry in here. So let's think about leaf placement. I think for symmetry, maybe we'll do leaves here and here. If you look at the leaves of a poinsettia, they're exactly the same shape as the petals. So it's not gonna be hard to figure out how to do our leaf shape. Now I'm gonna get a bunch of dark green. I may even mix some indigo with it. Blue might help set it off a little, but I'm gonna load up my brush again. So I'm thinking in this space would be a good spot for a leaf. We might do another one down here, but I don't want to overload it. So let's not, get ahead of ourselves. It's more just for practice. So load up your brush with a bunch of green. I'm using the same brush. We're gonna pull the leaf here as if it was, coming from underneath. Same shape that we were working with before. And again, I'm gonna try to get some darker tones going here. And then we're gonna tuck it all the way under, making sure this is dry. If this isn't dry, our green is gonna bleed. Again, it's not a problem if it bleeds. I don't mind, but if you wanna keep it super clean, which we really aren't, that's fine to just wait a little longer. But I'm gonna tuck it back in And we do that just by outlining our petals. And again, it'd be shadowed here, right? Because it's tucked underneath. So the darker green is going to go down here. And maybe the leaf does get lighter as it goes out. I always like to add a little dark at the tip, so it looks like the tip is farther away and this is tucked under. And I like that leaf. Yeah, I think that's a good leaf. I don't know if we really necessarily need another one. We can add a little center darkness here down the center if we want. I think that looks good. All right, let's focus on our center now. So the way I'm going to do the center is with a bunch of Winsor Yellow Deep and a tinge of this gouache that I showed you. Gouache makes it opaque, so you can't, see through it. Doesn't have the translucence of watercolor. And it allows it to show up a little better over top of what we already have going on, which is a lot of red, and otherwise it would kind of just bleed away and you wouldn't really see any of the yellow. So mix just a tinge. You don't need a ton. This is way too much. So I'm gonna rinse that off my brush. Just wanna mix a tinge in with my yellow. So I have yellow mixed in. You can see how it's almost like cloudy, like maybe chalky, if that's the right word. And we're gonna go in and make a circle. See, it still has some of the properties of watercolor. It's not completely like solid like an acrylic paint, but it does have more of the aspect of an acrylic. And this isn't a perfect circle. It has kind of like lumps and bumps. But I think that looks pretty good from a size and shape perspective. Sometimes I like to go and add a little bit of our dark green just at the edges. Is it like a little, you can see it's just blending a little, but that's okay. Gives it a little dimension. It's a little bit more interesting, and I think it's probably more true to life. And then if you want to, you can take like a really small brush and just put a little bit of gouache on straight. I'm gonna do it from the tube. You're actually not supposed to do that. It's not really good form, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And I'm gonna try to add in, a little, you see I'm gonna dab it in, a little bit of a whiter highlight on one side. And it does blend with the yellow, so it won't be quite as strong when we're done, but it's almost like kind of like a highlight on the edge. And last but not least, if you want to, you can take the tip of your brush like this. Now, a lot of these petals, probably we should have done it when it's a little wetter, but a lot of these petals, what you can do is make a little line. I don't know if that really shows up, but if it's still a little wet, you can actually add a little detail to your petal by kind of putting a line down the center. Where you don't have this white, like if you haven't preserved that, you can actually create it by pushing with the end of your brush, making sure your brush is very dry on the end. It can add a little detail. You can do it with your leaf. And if you look, I'll show you, you can even do some veining with it if you want on your leaf. So it's a way to do it without adding any more pigment. But you can kind of take the veining out, like where it would be. It's just a little detail that you can add if you want to your poinsettia. And again, if these were still wet, we could go back in and do it there as well. But otherwise, you are done. You have completed a lovely holiday poinsettia. You could paint these again. They're sort of like fun as a little card to someone, or a place card, a note card, a gift tag, or just practice them for fun, because they really are like the symbol of the holidays and also just of winter, if you want to do something like that. Thanks for painting with me today. I hope you'll find me on Instagram at Sweet Seasons Art. Find some of my Skillshare classes by searching Sweet Seasons Art. I also have a website, and I would love to see your work if you were to share it. And thanks for watching this tutorial, and please follow along on my channel. Have a great day.